This podcast is dedicated to helping you navigate the challenges of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. I'm your host, John Fischer, and together, we'll explore the paths to healing and growth through inspiring conversations with individuals who volunteer for discomfort, who embrace life's toughest lessons to become stronger and more resilient. My mission is to reach out to those who are hurting and provide the encouragement and inspiration needed to endure your own journey. This is the Phase 1 podcast. Katie, welcome to the Phase 1 podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for spending a little bit of life with me and sharing your story, your mission, and your message with all of us. We met, I would say, almost a month ago because you did Bigfoot last year.
Correct.
And I think it'll be interesting to hear two different perspectives since the course was not the OG this year. But like I was telling you before we hit record, that the first 200 for me, so now is the standard. So I have nothing else to compare it to except what you're about to tell me. So yeah, welcome. This is going to be a really awesome conversation. And like we always do, the first thing we talk about is your story. So would you share with us your highs, your lows, all those significant moments in your life that brought you to the ultra trail?
Yeah, I think I was looking to find kind of my people, if you will, like back even when I was in middle school. You know, I was never really great at sports. I danced for as long as, I kind of could without being like, okay, I could tell what the other girls looked like in my dance class, and I did not start to look like them. So I figured, okay, that's not my path. And was not good at volleyball, softball, soccer, anything that involved hand-eye coordination. That was not my thing. So when I heard about cross country and it was a no-cut sport, I thought, okay, this is where all the other kids go to play a sport that can't do any of the other ones. So I kind of fell into cross country in seventh grade and just loved it. Like absolutely loved this community of almost kind of like, the leftover kids who didn't have the other sports to play. That's where I kind of found like my community. Those were like the people I was looking for, the people that are going to like lift you up in those hard moments and be with you, on the course. And then that kind of brought me into the high school years. And that was, I feel like I made some of the best friendships, running through the grass, fields of my cross country team. And then I feel like everyone almost did track then in the fall or the spring. You did cross country in the fall, track in the spring. And I liked track, but cross country was kind of where my heart was. So did that all throughout high school, loved it. Kind of took a pause on running in college and then got out and started doing marathons. Like a few of my friends, we were like, let's do the Chicago Marathon, once we graduate. And not to make myself sound super old, but it was like, you could just sign up for the Chicago Marathon. You didn't have to do this whole lottery process and all this. So I did the first Chicago and I was hooked. Like the training was awesome. I love dedicating yourself to something and putting, being all in and then seeing, the reward at the end of like crossing that finish line and never thinking in my wildest dreams would I ever want to go beyond 26.2. Mm-hmm. Like probably so many of us. And then, fast forward, like marathons were fun, but at some point, again, not to make it sound like a marathon's easy, but I'd get to the start line and like trying to get a different time wasn't motivating anymore. And I knew I could finish, like I knew I could gut it out. So I was like, what's next? So a gym I'm a part of here, they were doing a trail race that had a couple different distance options, like 5, 15, and 50K. It's like 50K seemed a little crazy. I'll do the 15 miler. And so it was like my first time back running on grass and, since my cross country days in high school, and it just brought all those feelings back. I was like, this is where I need to be. So pretty much from like 2016 on, I was just like, what can I do in the trail world? So typical progression, a couple 50Ks. Oh, then let's try to dip our toe in the 50. One of those people that definitely also said never will I ever do 100 miles, did 100 miles mm-hmm. and never ever thought I would ever do a 200. But then that brings me to Bigfoot. So I were like really the year before Bigfoot. I'd literally woken up from a dream where I thought I was in this like panic of like, I need to grab my pack. I was literally thinking I was in a nap in a 200. Never had I done a 200, but that was like the dream I had. And I could not shake it all weekend. That's all I could talk about.
Hmm.
And my husband's like, okay, is this going to be a thing? And I'm like, I don't know. And it was the same weekend that Bigfoot was going on in 2022. And that's, that's how the lottery it opens then. And so I thought, well, for the hell of it, I'm going to put my name in. I don't win things. I'm probably not going to get picked. It'll be a few years. Reached out to my coach and she's like, oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, I think he'd be ready in like a year or two. So, fast forward what it was like Labor Day when they pull the names and it's like a few weeks later and it's like, welcome to the class of 23. You're running Bigfoot. And, you have that like, I'm hoping you had the same feeling. I'm sure a lot of people, it's like, you're so excited. And also that pit in your stomach of like, what have I done?
Mm-hmm.
What have I done? So reached out to, my family, and I think they were a little like, oh, this is really happening. Reached out to my crew and they were super excited. My coach was like, well, okay, we're doing this. I was like, is this like a bad idea? She's like, no, I think it's amazing. So, and then, so pretty much from like August 22 to August of 23, I just threw myself into everything I could, learning about the 200s. And I think that's what was kind of so fun about looking back at the, like my ultra journey is like learning all the different things about the different distances, right? Like 50K is different to tackle from a 50 or like a mountainous 100 versus a, Midwest 100, versus then a 200 world. Like it's like something to constantly be learning and figuring out about yourself. And it was like terrifying, but also super exciting. I feel like the process of training for the 200 was the same as finding out I got in. Excitement mixed with a little bit of like, oh man, I'm shitting my
pants. Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's amazing. There's a few similarities that I'd like to talk about. For me, I didn't do any sports growing up in school, except in high school, this guy came up to me and he was just this wiry guy. And he saw me in the hall. He's like, hey, you look like you're a runner. Join the cross country team. And I was super skinny. Like back then I had hair and it was crazy hair. Like I just was a little goofy looking guy. And I was like, oh, this guy thinks that I look like a runner. I didn't run at all, but it encouraged me. I was like, all right, I'll show up and do this thing. And I think I've shared it before, but I showed up in like jeans and Vans or something. I didn't know we were going to do any running. Yeah. And so we start running. I die within like half a mile. I'm in the very back. And then I got some different shoes the next time and just stayed with the team through the summer. And within a short amount of time, I was hanging out with the guys in the front. I was like, oh, wow, like progress can happen through persistence. So I just kept showing up. And then I didn't stay with the team when fall came around because I had a job opportunity. And then I wanted to be a part of the Young Life program. So that was just kind of like, that was just the path that I chose at that time. But after I graduated, I started realizing how challenging life is, like the reality of life. I'm like, man, I wish that I stuck with cross country because it showed me something about what I was capable of doing. And so I just think that's interesting. And I do like your progression. Like you said, like the typical 50K, and then you start from there. My invitation to do an ultra was to do a 50 miler with 2 months preparation. And I ran like a few miles a week. I had no clue about this distance game. I had no clue how to eat. I didn't know how to ultra at all. All I knew is that, I've said it before, like crazy, you've heard it like, oh, those are for crazy people, unquote. But yeah, I accepted that invitation and trained for 2 months and showed up to start that 50 miler Palo Duro Canyon in North Texas. And IT band freaked out. And I do remember there was a very significant moment in that first race because about 15 miles in, I knew the pain was getting more severe. I hadn't felt it before. It was on my right side and it was right on the outside of my knee. And every step that I took was just absolute agony. And I was like, all right, what would David Goggins do? Like, I don't feel him with me right now. He's not screaming in my ear. So I have to have this
Right.
conversation with myself. So I get to the 20-mile mark. I made the cutoff, but once I started again, I had a very strong feeling I wasn't going to make that cutoff. And I remember about 100 meters after that start, I stopped, I turned around, and I looked at the vehicle like in the parking lot. I was like, all right, hey man, you're not getting 50 miles today, but you have a choice to make right now. You can turn around and walk back and say you gave it what you had and you tried, or you can continue on the journey, continue on the path and show up with what you have and get the miles that you can. And so I ended up going for a very long hike the rest of that day. The park closed at 6 p.m. and I crossed that line, just hobbled in, and I got 35 miles that day. But it was a very, very impactful moment for me, and I'll never forget it because I
Hmm.
had that conscious decision to make. And I think it's so important for people to recognize that we can plan, we can prepare, but like you and I were talking about before we hit record, the plan is to pivot. And I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
is something I'm going to take with me for every race in the future because I don't know how it's going to go. But I know
Hmm.
now the decision that I made, which was give it what you can and keep going. So
Yeah.
yeah, after that, fast forward a few months from there, I did Bandera 50K, and then a few months after that, I did my first 50 miler in Washington State, and then the rest of the summer, like that was a really hard time for me emotionally, and for some reason, the only thing that sounded like it made sense was just sign up for as many ultras as I could. So I just did
Yep.
ultras back to back, and that was my summer. So I'd do like a 50K one weekend, the next do 100K, and then give it a little bit of time. I did 100K, then 50K, and all these these races. And I also did some backyard ultras. I didn't really tell anybody about it. It was just my own personal journey. But I
Hmm.
would run on the Air Force Base and just do 30 milers. And I'm grateful for that summer because what it gave me was momentum to just roll
Hmm.
into the next thing that was possible. And I don't, well, actually, oh yeah, I remember sitting in my backyard and I looked at Rocky Raccoon 100 miler and I was like, man, like, why not? And more important than the question of why not, it was what if? So I signed up
Hmm.
for Rocky with 6 months and I became obsessed with training for Rocky. And I couldn't shake it. And I'm glad, I think I was headed in a healthy direction, but I I gave it everything. And fortunately I was able to complete Rocky. I finished it with like 45 minutes to spare. But I finished it. And it was
Yeah. Yeah.
so, oh my gosh. Like, I didn't cry at the finish. I had quite a few tears. When I, when I saw 100 on my watch, it was like a
Yeah.
mile or so shy of the finish. I lost it at that point.
Yeah.
So it just hit me at a different time. But all that to say is, everyone's progression is different, but my encouragement is just let it give you the momentum and just keep on going. I can't remember
Hmm.
what it was that made me think that Bigfoot was a potential reality. Like, I don't know. I don't remember signing up for it, to be honest. I don't remember. But I knew I signed up for it and I didn't think it was going to happen because I was like 150 or something on the wait list.
Right.
And then, like you were saying, you got that email notification, and I about died. I
Yeah.
gasped. Like, I had to remind myself how to breathe. But I remember recording my reaction, or not my reaction, but my response. Like, I did a little screen
Yeah.
recording and I hit the accept button and posted that. And it was just a decision to make. And it goes back to the decision that I made on that first ultra, which is, hey, man,
Yes.
you can choose to retreat or you can choose to continue. So I'm really glad that I accepted that invitation, and we were talking about it before, but those memories on Bigfoot Trail, never going to forget them. So
Yeah,
yeah.
agree.
What are the most impactful moments on your Bigfoot trail?
Yeah, I think kind of like you, I had a moment in a few, like one of the hundreds before signing up for Bigfoot too, where I kind of finally felt like instead of going into it with like, what if something bad happens? What if this happens? What if this happens and I can't get to the finish? My coach had simply written like a couple like things in my, like my training log. It was like, just remember you are able and capable. And like those two words, so simple. And it's such a simple, like both of the meanings are so simple, but that just like resonated with me. Like I actually got it tattooed on in my ankles because I was like, I want this to be part of, I want to be able to see it every day. And that mind shift of just like, what happens if I just try? What if I just let myself have the day that maybe I don't think I'm ready for or I'm trained for, and just run this whole day without this like fear of what's going to happen, and be open to the chances of what could happen if I actually just go out there and trust myself. And it was a magical day. It was one of those days where just like everything is just clicking. The crew is having a great time. Like I'm seeing them and I'm like, like just, we're just knocking the day out. And I think if I hadn't had that day during that 100, I don't know if I would have had the confidence even just to push the button to sign up, so it's like I needed that day of just like trusting myself that I had it in me. Like I was a runner, like I've proven to myself now I am a runner. And the same kind of you, where you have that moment of like, I can choose the easy path or I can keep going. I think that day proved to me that like, you don't know what you're capable of unless you take that path of, maybe the unknown or something you're scared of. And I, now having had the Bigfoot experience, I would be so sad if I never gave myself that opportunity, and I think that's what's so powerful about what you're doing with this podcast is like, oh, we finally have a cat now. Here we go. This is Juliet. Yeah, I think people probably sell themselves short, a lot, especially as you get older, or maybe, you were a road runner and you're chasing PRs and now you're like, what's next for me? I think what's so cool about the ultra world is like, it's not so time-based. It's really like experience-based and like believing in yourself and just gritting it out till the end. Like I love, for a lot of the 200s, right? Like the people that finish at the top of the podium come back and, make the big tunnel for the last person. And they're just like, wow, can you imagine this person's been out there for double the amount of time that I have? And just like the respect overall in the community and the support is something, I mean, I'm sure you felt too, as soon as you joined the ultra community, like, it's like, whoa, this is a completely different world. Like the elites are cheering on the average everyday person, whereas like road running, that does not happen. Like I love, I look up to those people, but like Des Lind isn't going to high five me in Chicago. Whereas like in the ultra world, you could cross paths with somebody who's literally going to win this race. And if you were down for some reason, they'd probably stop and see if you're okay and see if they can get you some food, And so I think just seeing the community and the belief everyone has in one another, and no matter what, like that determination to get to the finish, no matter what it takes, was something so powerful. And like yourself, I mean, there's not a day goes by that I don't have a fond memory of Bigfoot. And it was one, because it proved to myself, like, once again, kind of like that first marathon, like, wow, I set my sights on something. It was a little scary, but I did all the work and then I got it done, and like, for me, it was really special to have like my crew of people there, like my daughter and my best friends, and having it be this like communal experience, not only within my little crew, but like within the community of, the 2023 Bigfoot class. Like it was, it's wild to think like you spend a handful of time with people on a trail and you feel like you know them, like you've known them for years because you're all in that same shared experience. Like I think that was what like just drew me in even more, I think my family was a little like, okay, are these 200 is going to become a thing, or just like a one and done? And I was like, I don't know. And I should have known myself. Like the second I was done and we got back to the Airbnb and I was on the couch, I'm like, okay, y'all, who wants, who don't we want to do this again? So I was hooked.
Awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, I think, well, I've mentioned this a few times before, but it applies perfectly with the Bigfoot route. The way that it was this year, it was out and backs. So we were crossing paths, and the people that were in the very front were just as encouraging as I was in the very back. So,
Yeah.
but it was so humbling and so encouraging to be encouraged by people in the front, like Harvey Lewis.
Hmm. Yeah.
He was finishing his 200 miles as I was leaving to start my last 100 miles. He lapped me by
Yeah.
100 miles.
Crazy.
It was beautiful. It was so cool. It was so awesome. And he would just encourage me every time he passed me. And he was just in the zone. He was doing his thing, but he'd give me some advice, guidance.
Yeah.
Hey, just up the trail, on the left, water, you'll get there. And I was like, oh, thank you. And I needed it. I was like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
But it was so
Yeah.
helpful. And I absolutely love that. It's shared suffering, collective suffering. It doesn't necessarily matter like your level of discomfort, because the fundamental understanding prerequisite to the ultra game is discomfort. It's going to be uncomfortable. So it helps when you just lean into that with that understanding. And then it just applies to life. Like when people are really, really struggling, it's not like we need to look at each other in the eye and say, hey, life is really hard right now. But you can look at each other and you have this fundamental understanding that life is hard. And then you just encourage to keep going.
Exactly.
Yeah, your coach was saying some mantras that are really helpful for you when you're on that trail. Like for me, I just had these phrases pop up in the middle of really uncomfortable times. And it's cool because I get to give those to other people. And I haven't given a lot of them on this podcast, but it reminded me of a few and I wrote them down. I would like to share it so everybody can take them. But when we're in the middle of an ultra and everything is going unplanned, like everything could be going really, really smooth. Like for one of the backyard ultras I was telling you about, like I did a 30 miler and up until mile 28, everything was smooth. Everything was smooth. But in a very short amount of time, it was not smooth anymore. It was like 100 degrees. I had sweat like pooling in my eyes. And that's something I don't really think about. Like, oh, okay. It's like sweat in my eyes. Like it may sound like silly and pathetic, but I'm like, okay, I can't get to where I need to go if I can't see because I have sweat in my eyes.
It burns. Yeah.
It hurts so bad. And then on top of that, like just out of nowhere, I was like, I have the worst chafe of my entire life. And then I ran out of water and my headphones died. And like all these surface level things, like, but I wasn't expecting them. And so it rattled me. And so started doing some soul searching and this phrase popped into my head, and it's something that just encouraged me and helped me to go the next 2 miles, which was a real effort. It was a real effort to finish that. But what I said was, I know, and then I filled in the blank. Like, I know that I have no water. I have the worst chafe of my life. I have sweat in my eyes. My headphones died, but I'm still here. And so that is the message, and that's the concept or the phrase that anybody listening can take is you fill in the blank. You start with I know ... all these uncertain, or what am I trying to say? All of these
like almost like mini obstacles.
Yeah, obstacles, adversities, all these challenges that you have to navigate, but you remind yourself that you're still there. And then another simple one that I tell myself is I can and I am. Just in the middle, just at any moment, I can tell myself I can and I am.
Yeah, I love that.
And it applies to any challenge or obstacle or adversity that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Like I can endure the challenges of life and I am. And that's why I love ultras, because we have those compartmentalize opportunities to lean into discomfort and then take those lessons, apply it to the day's adversity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you for reminding me of those things. There's some things that I'm pulling out today that I haven't thought about for a long time. So I appreciate that.
For sure.
So what's your mission that you're on right now? What's next for you?
So I signed up for Cocodona.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm excited. I wanted something different from Bigfoot. Like I feel like I put Bigfoot on this pedestal of like I've always wanted to go to the Pacific Northwest. It was gorgeous. My favorite color is green, if you can't tell by some of my water bottle, my shirt. And it was such an amazing experience. So I was like, okay, I don't want to do something that's going to be in a similar environment, but I want something in a, obviously I still wanted to pick another 200. So I thought, okay, well, Arizona, I've only been to the Grand Canyon. I was like really little and I was 6, so I don't remember it. So like, okay, well, Arizona was going to be such a polar opposite, like heat's more of a factor. The course is totally different. Never mind like the extra 40 or 50 miles, but I don't know, it seemed like the next thing to do. So that's on my radar right now, or I'm training for it. So it's more than the radar.
That's awesome. So what really pulled you into Cocodona?
So it's funny to see the different races and how they kind of structure presenting themselves, right? Like a destination trails is kind of like that mystery, that aura of like what's happening, because there's no live stream. There's just you track a friend and you see them finish. Maybe you see them finish live, and maybe the camera doesn't work. Whereas Cocodona, I was looking forward to watching that every May. Just being able to wake up and see these people's progress. And until you've been in that situation, and even I feel like after the fact, like even after doing Bigfoot and then watching Cocodona this year, it's still mind blowing to think I've lived a day. I'm going to bed. I'm getting up. I'm doing work. I'm eating meals, and these people are still going. And you're like, we did that, but it's still so wild to think about when you're not in that world. And so I think just the complete different of course was really what really kind of drew me in. I think from the parts I've seen on the live stream, and then just kind of doing some recon and just knowing what obviously you experienced in Bigfoot compared to what people talk about in Cocodona, I was just like, this seems like such a great next one to do. And to not be able to really compare the two, I think, because it's like I think it's hard to probably top any of the first of, some experience in a way. So something just called me to Cocodona. And then as soon as listening to the live stream, as soon as they said the registration's going live in 20 minutes, I was eagerly on ultra sign up. So it was also a different experience being able to know like you're in versus signing up and just kind of crossing your fingers. So
yeah, I like that concept of feeling called to do something. And for me, like, when I heard of the Arizona Monster 300, I was like, there's a 300-mile race in Arizona? I was like, I've never been to Arizona, but I've heard that it's really cool. And like I say that in kind of a joking way, but deep in my core, like when I heard of the Arizona Monster 300, I had a really weird response. Like, and it's something I'm going to talk to my therapist about, because it was like a response. Like if I was addicted to something, like my body started shaking.
yeah,
I don't know if it was a combination of, oh, this is exciting. Oh, this is like, no one's done this before. It's the first one. I've never been to Arizona. I don't know what it's like. Could this be possible? What if? So it was a combination of all these things that I was experiencing, and it felt like I could not relax until I signed up for it. And at that time, there was only like 7 spots left available.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, the pressure was on for sure. But internally, I love adapting. I love seeing how I persevere through uncertain circumstances and apply the practice of adaptation. So I think that's something that really drew me in, is the absolute uncertainty. I can't go to someone and ask them, hey, how was the Monster 300?
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
but I get to find out, you know,
Yeah. That's going to be
and
great.
if I have a conversation with my future self, the way that I'm living my life right now, I'm not surprised. Like I had to lose myself after I say I had to. I believe that like the concept that I just brought up of adaptation, it applies in a healthy way and it applied to my life in a really, really unhealthy way. I also threw myself into some horrible situations to see how I would adapt in relationships. And I was not proud of that. So I was like, all right, well, let me throw myself into some healthier situations and
Mm-hmm.
pursue progress, you know, and try to be healthy. So all that to say, I it's interesting because I don't think about these things, but you've brought up quite a few things that I'm like, oh, it's just it's a good conversation to have. I'm really grateful that we're having this, and yeah, I'm kind of going back into some parts of my brain I forgot about. But yeah, I can't go up to somebody and ask like, hey, how was
Mm-hmm.
the Monster 300? But I get to find out, and like I was saying, with my future self having those conversations, like I'm not surprised that I would sign up for a 300-mile race that is you know the inaugural
Yeah.
first 300. I don't know, it's just so uncertain that it's another level of excitement,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really excited to start that journey. And it's
Yeah.
already been
No, there's
6
something so
months.
cool about like the first time doing like that's some, I do, whenever I hear somebody talk about like being part of an inaugural year, there's always the hiccups, but it's also kind of like that experience that bonds everybody in that rate. Like no one will ever run the first 300, but you all that signed up. And that's also then a special bonding, just in itself.
Yeah, it goes back to that collective suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have respect for anyone who stands the line for an ultra. It doesn't matter if it's a 28 or 26.3 mile run.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, you're in ultra territory at that time, but
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much uncertainty in nature, and nature can always win, but with perseverance and a willingness to endure, so can we.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We can be so much stronger when we're together. I do think it's really important
Agreed.
to mention the the fact that like we are capable of doing so much more when we're with people, but
Agreed.
there's a significant time in our lives where we're going to have to do things on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And for so much of my life, I thought I am living every moment of my day on my own. And through the ultra game, specifically Bigfoot, is where I really understood the impact of community. So community is new to me, and I found it through the ultra world. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is new to me, and I'm trying to find this balance. But I've also identified like for my daily discipline, my daily consistency and dedication, like I am the one that wakes up hours before I need to and train and continue
Mm-hmm.
to lean into integrity and do the things I know I'm capable of doing that may be uncomfortable, that gets me towards where I want to be.
Right.
And that's on my own. But what's really beautiful is just like the ultra world and just like that ultra trail is there is going to be a time where we hit those aid stations and people are going to be there to support us, just like in life. Like we're
Yeah.
not alone. Like there are people out there that want to support us and care about us. And then every once in a while, someone's going to run with you and be by your side every step of the way. And that's really cool too. So yeah, I'm just pulling these lessons that I've learned from the ultra trail and applying them to daily life because they're so applicable.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I think I think I've heard in your other, when you guys have had other conversations, and this has definitely resonated with me too, what during Bigfoot was just how after you kind of got through the first day of, of the adventure of realizing this is all, everything is simplified down. It's just waking up. it's moving your body forward. It's eating, it's drinking, it's, like maybe interacting with, some other, athletes on the course, but there's no other noise. There's no other, anything else that's going on in the world. If it's not directly impacting the race and the course, like you just don't know about it. You're not worrying about work. You're not worrying about, there was nothing else to worry about, but just the simple basic things. And that I think for all of us, and especially for Bigfoot, right? I mean, having no reception, it was like, it's just you and nature. And when do we ever get that opportunity? I think that was also something that like I brought home and just thought, wow, I didn't realize how much I was going to enjoy it. It started off as almost being a fear to not have, oh my gosh, so if I need anything, like that's it. It's just me out there. Like I have to get to the next spot because I can't call anybody. I know, yeah, we have like our little, our tracker things, but that'd be like, matter of life or death kind of a thing. It's like, otherwise everything else, yeah, it's just, you have to just keep going to the next spot. Otherwise no one's coming to get you. And it started off as being kind of a scary thought and ended up being something I kind of missed going, being out of the race situation, being back in the real world of like, wow, that's actually really nice to not have to worry about anything else, but just being out there and, getting to like live life versus being distracted with, the noise of the real world.
Oh, 100%. And I think that there is something beautiful that happens when we are unplugged from our current reality and we expose ourselves to nature for an extended amount of time. It was day 3 that things started to really get in sync, like physically, mentally, and emotionally and spiritually. Like there was a mind, body, spirit sync about 3 days later because of what you're talking about. It's really simple. Like, it's not complex. It's challenging. It's very, very hard to do, but it was simple. Just lean into integrity and do the things I knew I needed to do, like eat and drink and
Right.
move, and just keep doing that. But the body adapts. It's really, really beautiful. And then, I really think that it's just a conditioning process. Like we have a routine. We are civilized people, so we do things a very specific way, and to break out of that and to expose ourselves to a new environment, it can take some time, but it is really, really beautiful just to see the adaptation. And I was thinking about what you were saying earlier when you're watching the live feed, during Cocodona, and like for me, I was going to work and then I
Yeah.
was living my life, and then I go to bed and I
Yep.
wake up and I'm tracking. I'm like, yep, they're still going.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I can remember how I was reacting before I did Bigfoot and then did Bigfoot, and I still have the same feeling. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're
Yeah.
going to be moving for, about 4 days? Wow. And I kind of,
Yeah.
do I forget that I did that once? I don't know.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, let's see. I was taking a lot of notes, but I did hit all the things that I was reminded of. With your journey on the ultra trail, with the time that we have, what are some lessons that you've learned that you can give to someone who's going through a hard time right now?
Yeah, I think it's hard when you're in a hard situation or a hard season of life to think that it's going to end, that it's not going to be this feeling forever, right? And I think that's where like the ultra world and the real world do parallel so well. Because you can be in a hard moment in a race where you're like, wow, I mean, everything hurts. I'm only at this mile. How am I possibly going to get there? Or like the cutoffs are cutting, like beating down my neck. Like, what am I going to do? And I think in the real world, the same thing. If you're hit with something that seems really hard and really difficult, the more that you just kind of let yourself deep dive into that feeling of being stuck, it's not going to help anything, whether you're in a race or in your real world. I think it's just like letting yourself maybe have that moment of like, wow, this is really hard. And this maybe kind of sucks a little bit. And I really wish I didn't have to do this, but knowing that you're going to come out on the other end and be stronger for it because you got through that tough time in life or through that tough moment in a race. I think that helps. I think being able to experience both in life and in a race helps in both situations. Getting through a hard spot in a race can definitely help when you're in a difficult season of life, knowing, yes, this is hard right now, but it's not going to stay hard because I'm going to do the things I need to do to make sure I come out on the other end, whether it's therapy or going out for a run or maybe realizing you need just a nice coffee chat with a friend, same thing in a race. Like, oh man, I'm really feeling low right now. Okay, maybe I need to have a 1 minute pity party. And then maybe I realize I haven't eaten in 3 hours. Maybe I just need to have a snack, like it could be that simple. But that's where I think, both worlds collide so well and can help. I love running. I'm always passionate about getting people into it, but I feel like running is a very love-hate relationship. So you either love it or you don't. But I think of the better person I am, the stronger person I am because of running. I wasn't a very confident person growing up. I still kind of struggle with that sometimes, but I feel like my running life has given me that, helped build that confidence. And it doesn't necessarily always translate into the real world, but I'm working on it being more that way. So I think whether anything that I feel like anyone struggles with mentally, physically, being able to, kind of strip all the things down and being in a race situation helps you realize how strong you really are. I think all of us probably have those realizations again, like you said, whether it's someone's first 5K or 200 miler, you didn't think maybe you could do it at one point, and then you did the steps to do it, and you get to the end, and no matter how much it hurt, you still proved to yourself that because you did it and you tried hard and it was something important to you, you got to the end. Whether it's like maybe you want to go back to school or you're debating about starting a family or all the weird, all the little things that happen in life. Like, I think realizing that if you set the goal, set the intention, the mindset, and do the work, for the most part, those things can happen. Obviously, not everyone's going to be an actor or actress or, win $1 million, but the things that really matter in life, I feel like if you prove to yourself you can do it in something like sport, it helps in the real world then when you have those same difficult situations, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, makes perfect sense to me. I appreciate your insight and your willingness to share those words of encouragement. You're talking about confidence, and that's something that I've always struggled with as well, is dealing with a lack of confidence. And I have gained confidence through running, but what I've really leaned into is courage as opposed to standing the line knowing that I have this confidence, because what I'm wanting to chase is uncertainty. So how can I be certain that I'm going to achieve something when I'm standing the line of something I've never done before? And I think that what you were saying was really important about, what I was taking from what you were talking about is finding something that allows you to grow. For me, having conversations about my past and trauma is going to be really, really challenging. But I just started therapy again yesterday, and so my challenge in life right now, 'cause I've conditioned myself to run, and I know that I can run, and I'm operating in an environment that I'm comfortable in, to a degree when I'm doing my training runs. But having a conversation about my past and trauma, okay, now we're in another world, and that's another game. But there's growth on the other side of that. So I just hope that people are encouraged to get out of their conditioned comfort and to do some soul searching and figure out what you need to do today to be healthier than you were yesterday.
Because I think sometimes we're all probably scared of that vulnerability. Will it be? Will someone care? Will it be? If I share something that's vulnerable, will that be why? If I share it and I don't get the response I'm thinking of, is that going to be even more damaging to yourself? Or to be like, oh, now I shared it, now this is that. But I think coming back to being in an ultra, you are stripped down and you are vulnerable, and your probably deepest insecurities come out, but coming out on the other end and being like, wow, I was vulnerable. And but I got to the aid station and people still wanted to help me. And I was, maybe upset or, didn't believe I could go on. And so it's probably the same thing of sharing that in the real world of things that you've gone through, because maybe by you sharing what something you've been through, it helps someone else feel like they can share. And then it's not just something you've held bottled up. It's, you're able to let it be free so that you can be more free,
Of course. There's so much encouragement when you can have this collective suffering and look at someone next to you and say, oh, you're struggling too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that translates into life. You start having these conversations that could be uncomfortable, and then someone's like, oh, me too. And then you
Mm-hmm.
know, okay, wow, all right, this is progress.
Yeah.
And progress is something that's not always going to be fast, but it's deliberate, it's intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier I was saying, I know that I can run, but that doesn't mean that it's easy.
Right.
The first 30 minutes of every run is usually my body asking me, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And it takes a
Yep.
while to warm up and get going, but I have never regretted going on a run, even in the moment when it's been
Agreed.
so brutal and I didn't want to do it
Yeah.
in the moment. I've never regretted
Oh yeah,
going on a
same.
run.
Same.
That's awesome. Is your cat having a good time?
Oh yeah, this is her heaven.
Oh, she
She
looks
loves
like
it.
she's just loving it.
Yeah, anytime I'm on the call, anytime I'm on the phone, she's here.
Yeah, that's so sweet. Well, Katie, it was so cool to meet you, and it was awesome to have this
Yeah, you
conversation with you.
too.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Agree.
sharing
Same.
your story and your mission and your message, your words of encouragement. I'm very encouraged by this conversation. I know it's going to help someone else.
I love it. Yeah, same. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for joining the Phase 1 podcast. I hope you have an awesome day.
I hope you do too.
Thank you for tuning in to the Phase 1 podcast. I hope that you gained inspiration and encouragement through this conversation. If someone you know is hurting and could use the same inspiration and encouragement, please pass this their way. Until next time, ask yourself one question. What's your Phase 1?